I was sharing with the Honourable Deputy Prime Minister a few minutes ago. The difficulty I find myself in is, after having listened to everyone on this very important piece of legislation and the excellent speech pronounced by the Honourable Minister of Social Security and the others, I find myself with very less, because I don't want to repeat whatever they've said. However, just to pick up from where my honourable friend, the Minister of Social Security, has left off. Everyone agrees that the whole idea of legal aid is indeed for the issue of access to justice to be resolved. I have had the opportunity of reading the past legislations back in the 70s, and I've had the pleasure of reading some of the excellent presentations made by those who are no longer with us. Honourable Olivry, for instance, Honourable Dugnaville in those days. And the interesting thing is that everything that my learned friends from the bar have said here, even including the Attorney General and honourable members have said today, is exactly what they were saying back in the 70s. In other words, it is a fundamental right, that of having access to justice, that one should not curtail the access to justice, one should not put barriers to that access, otherwise we would be defeating the purpose of access to justice. This is exactly what then Honourable Guy Olivry was saying in this House. And I find it, as I say it again, interesting that now we are in 2025 and we are saying the same thing. So somewhere, somehow, something has gone wrong. We have the habit in this republic of ours of having beautifully written laws. But we also have the bad habit of not being able to enforce laws. So when I read our Constitution, and our Constitution says at the very start, and some people from the previous government failed to understand what exactly Section 1 of the Constitution means. Mauritius shall be a sovereign democratic state. What is democracy? Democracy is just not having the right to say something, but democracy is wider than that. And part of democracy is also the element of access to justice. Because if you don't give proper access to justice, democracy is stifled. You're killing democracy. And when I go to Section 10 of the Constitution, it's even more interesting, because the framers of our Constitution, provisions to secure protection of law, subsection 2C, every person who is charged with a criminal offence shall be given adequate time and facilities for the preparation of his defense. But I don't stop there, and the Constitution doesn't stop there. It goes further, subsection D. And this is where the subject of this debate today takes all its relevance, because it finds its footing, its source, at section 10(2)D of the Constitution. It says, every person who is charged with a criminal offence shall be permitted to defend himself in person or at his own expense by a legal representative of his own choice. And I go further. Or where so prescribed by a legal representative provided at the public expense. So the whole idea of providing someone, a lawyer, to represent someone in a court of law at the public expense is there in our Constitution. And why do I stress on that, Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir? It's because here I speak to the nation. And what I see in front of me, as other friends have reminded us, 2 empty chairs.
Three.
Oh yes. I say 2 because sometimes some people do not know where they stand. And very often they try to sit on the fence. And I've always said, be careful when you sit on the fence, it will hurt physically. So we have those 3 empty spaces. But not only are the seats empty, And it is not the first time that the opposition chooses not to be present. They choose not to be present, but hear me out. They believe by their absence that they have nothing to contribute to this piece of legislation. And what is this legislation talking about? It talks about providing help. Let me simplify it. Those who can't afford justice, those who can't open the doors to a court of law, to have a lawyer next to their side, or a solicitor, an attorney, that we give them that possibility without any barriers. This is what the law is about. So it addresses those who can't afford. In other words, the poor, those at low income, those who need our help, those who need our attention, those who need us to listen to what they're saying. And this is an example of how this government is not only listening, but through what the Attorney General and this government has done, we've acted upon what we've heard. Not only listened, but we've acted upon what we've heard. And this is the result of the action, this piece of legislation. Opening the doors to the courts, to justice. And not only leaving in our Constitution the simple theory that what the Constitution says, you shall be able to obtain at the expense of the public, the state, a representative. But it doesn't leave it in our books. We turn it into reality. So today, when I see those empty seats, what it says to me is that they are not interested. They are only interested in going out there and telling people, well, this is what is being taken away from you. But they are not interested, or they do not realize, either out of incompetence or of sheer ignorance, choose it, left or right they lose. They are not even aware that this is such an important piece of legislation that we are here putting into practice what is in theory provided for in our Constitution. This is a shame, Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir. So and I want people out there, through those words, through my words, through the words of all our friends in this assembly who have chosen to be present, to look at what those empty seats mean. That for them, the people who want access to justice, they mean nothing to the opposition that should have been here but have chosen to be absent. Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, I have had an interesting read of a document entitled "In Mauritius, Courts and Police Confront Weakened Public Trust Amid Persistent Perceptions of Corruption." This is Afrobarometer, which is of 6th of September 2024. The first page of that document, I quote from it, Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir. It says, Afrobarometer's latest survey in Mauritius sheds light on public perceptions of the judiciary and police. Findings show that a mere 1/5 of Mauritians view the rulings of judges and magistrates as completely free from political interference. And who was in power then? The empty seats. They've run away. 2/3 of citizens suspect that at least some judges and magistrates are involved in corruption. I'm not saying it's true, but this is the perception. A perception encouraged by a government whose representatives today in the opposition have chosen to run away. But it's encouraged by a government that did nothing for access to justice for 10 years whilst they were in power. And what the study also shows, and it's interesting, the reading of this study, it shows that people with low income are those who do not trust our justice system the most. That's interesting. People with low income are those that don't trust our justice system the most. In other words, when you do not open up the issue of accessibility to justice, when you do not come up with legislations of this nature, when you do not do such a marvelous job as the Honourable Attorney General has done, that is when you encourage those who do not have enough money to pay a lawyer or pay a solicitor. You encourage those people not to have confidence in the judiciary. And what I find interesting at page 11 of this report, which is dated 6th of September 2024 at page 11 of this report. I find it interesting. And I then rejoin what Honourable, what Honourable Mulobin has stated. And it says here, page 11, more than 58% of Mauritians say they are not aware of any legal aid services in their community. This is serious. So what is the point of having beautiful laws if you do not know that this is what you have access to? So yes, I agree, and I'm sure that the Honourable Attorney General has taken note, and I'm sure that those who will be responsible for the manning of the system will take note of what has been said. We have to let them know that they have access to this. We have to let them know not only that they have access to this, we also have to let them know that not only we participated in the process of giving them access to it, but there are certain people who chose not to participate. That also they have to know. But I'm not saying that we have to put it on a flyer, that one. But then again, I mean, they have to know. So what I find of most interesting, and I'd like here to quote a judgment, that of A.S. Mahmoud versus the Queen, 1991, Mauritius Reports, page 223. In that judgment, it says, I quote, the concept of fair trial, guaranteed by Section 10 of the Constitution, the section I just referred to, implies fair and impartial inquiries into the allegations of accused parties, the more so when, as in the present case, the accused is detained pending his trial. In other words, you cannot have a fair trial without a fair inquiry. And how can you have a fair inquiry, subsequently a fair trial, if the person who is suspected of having committed an offense, I use that as an example, if he does not have access to legal advice and legal assistance at the time that he is being questioned as a suspect? How can he benefit from any fair trial if him is not taken care of from the very start? So that is why, Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, it is always easy to read a piece of legislation. It is nice to be able to write it, but then again, to remove it from the Constitution, bring it into legislation, and to give it life, for it to mean something to people who need the assistance. This is the whole beauty of our system. And that is why it is a beautiful piece of legislation. That is why I congratulate the Honourable Attorney General and his officers and all those who have helped in the drafting of this piece of legislation. And this is how I hope we will continue admiring what the Honourable Attorney General... let me say this. I know for a fact, many of us are lawyers here. Every single person who are lawyers in this house, I must say, including myself, we don't wait. We have not waited for the legal aid system to function, for us to represent people pro bono, including yourself, Mr. Deputy Speaker. We do it. But I think it is important not only that we continue doing it. Let me say en passant that I miss the fact that I don't do it nowadays, but that we continue doing it. But I think that it's good now that we have a structured system that is clearly a better system. Those are my words. And I
Thank you, Minister. Honourable Attorney General.